Mastermind. Thank you guys for coming. To start out with, I want to just give you guys a little background on myself. I have been coaching since 2010, and prior to that, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've had 9 different businesses in just as many industries. Starting at age 10, so I guess you can't really call that a business, but that was my first entrepreneurial activity. Also around age 10, I began to get fascinated with human potential and metaphysics and sociology and all kinds of things. I mean, I didn't even know the words for back then. But I was a sci-fi kid, read a lot growing up, just really became fascinated with all those topics. Around 2007, I was literally almost at the end of my rope. Well, 2007, 2008. I had been studying the law of attraction principles, but then the economy crashed and my life went pretty much to hell. This is like a bad country song, I lost my house, I lost my car, I lost 2 businesses, and I went from making a comfortable $4,000 a month to barely scraping 15 in 1 month and barely scraping 1,000 in the month following that, and it just was swoosh, gone. So at that time, I had always been fascinated by energy and metaphysics and what I now know is called law of attraction, but back then didn't really have a word for it. So I really started intently focusing on what is working. Like, I know I manifested some things, but then I also know that I've manifested or encountered other things that were contrary to what I wanted, okay? I definitely did not want to go broke and lose everything. So I really became intently focused on studying that and trying to figure out what it was that worked and what didn't work, or what was working against myself. And really the conclusions I came to, well, that's what the book Living the Naked Life is all about, and I came up with 10 kind of formula or ways that seemed to enhance what was working to consciously manifest what I wanted to experience. Since then, I mean, I could refine it down and say really the first 2 principles in that book are the main, and then the other 8 are kind of expansions upon that. So those 2 are, first off, developing complete and utter honesty with everyone, especially yourself. And secondly, assuming total and complete responsibility for your life and everything in it. Every event, experience, everything that's happened in your life to this point, you have created somehow. Maybe not what you wanted to create, but based on the things that were a part of your psyche or your consciousness. I consider myself an experimental metaphysicist. So what that means is, what effect does consciousness play in the role of reality creation and experience? Well, we don't have the tools to measure a person's consciousness and what their beliefs and thoughts and feelings are. There's no tools that can objectively measure that. So it is a subjective practice. But I experiment in my own life, and I help you experiment in your life to get the results that you want. And tweaking consciousness is a specialty of mine. When I say that, let me give you kind of a greater overview. There are 6 parts of our being. Those are, first off, our spirit or energy, whatever you want to call it. Some people might call it a soul, a life force. Whatever it is, it's the part of us that makes us alive. Okay, without it, we're just lumps of flesh, right? Dead. I do not have an opinion on how that soul or energy or whatever came to be, where it's going, anything about that. What I do think is that we choose this life before we're born into it, and we may choose or may not choose certain experiences along the way. There's a great deal of variety. I don't think there's any one specific path. Like a lot of people are like, well, we're here to learn, or we're here to take on our karma, or, I don't know. I don't think there's any one specific path that's the same for everybody. I would say that we're here to have an experience, period. Whether it's a learning experience or a fun experience or a terrifying experience or whatever it is, we're here to have some kind of experience. The beauty of it is that even though you may have chosen certain things before you came into this life, you do have the ability and choice to change it at any time. In other words, you're not limited. Like, think of it like if you're going on a vacation. Okay, you may pre-plan parts of the vacation with a trip planner. You might say, well, I'm going to London for 2 weeks and then I want to visit Spain, and while I'm in London I want to make sure I go to this museum and I want to see the outside of the castle and I want to see, or go to this dinner presentation or whatever, points along the way. You may make reservations for those. However, nothing says that you have to stick to those reservations. You may get there and say, well, you know what, I'm not really interested in this walking tour anymore. Instead, I want to go do these 5 things. Life is pretty much the same way. Moving on, the next part of our consciousness is our beliefs. Now, our beliefs are, I think of them as like barnacles. They're layered onto us over time, starting at probably even before birth. It's shown that infants have some, or fetuses have some knowledge of the outside world. They're receiving input not only through their mother's physical being, but through sounds and other things like that. So, again, starting even before birth, we may begin to start accumulating these barnacles of beliefs. Beliefs are also kind of like computer programs. In other words, they just get stored and run without a lot of conscious thought or interpretation on our part. As we get older, we may start to question these beliefs, but we don't really have necessarily consciousness and self-awareness until around between ages 7 and 9 for most people. So up till that age, you're just getting bombarded with all this stuff and it's just going right in there and getting stored and you don't even know, right? After that, it's still coming in and getting stored, but you may start to question a little bit more than you did, right? In any case, one of the reasons, a lot of people ask me why naked, and one of the reasons that I started doing coaching naked was because I think that all of us are impacted at a very young age by one of those beliefs, the taboo against nudity. Think about it. When you see little kids, what do? Pretty much every toddler I've ever seen at some point takes off their clothes and is running around naked. Woo! Free and happy. And then along comes an adult, and this probably happens more than once or twice, toddlers are toddlers, and says, no, bad, in some way, shape, or form, punishes the child, or at least enforces a rule upon the child, which they have no conscious interpretation of. So I do think that it kind of builds like a deep trauma or wound, just that experience. It's not that the parents are trying to hurt the child, but if you think about it, the child with no consciousness of rules or laws or whatever is suddenly interrupted from the process of being free and happy and running around with joy, as all little children do, and told they're bad, and they don't understand why, so it just goes deep into the psyche and becomes, oh, I'm bad, me, right? Or my happiness, or whatever it is that the child internalizes that as. So I think getting naked helps heal a lot of that just right off the bat. And there's other reasons, but that was one of the main ones when I started this, was to help people overcome that part of that wound and that belief system that their self, their authentic, true inner self is bad. There are a ton of other belief systems. I really enjoy helping people figure out what theirs are and helping change those beliefs. The next layer down, and I say down because I think that they kind of have a trickle-down and cumulative effect. So the next layer down is our thoughts. The thoughts are the things that go through our mind on a moment-to-momentary basis. And they're usually influenced by our beliefs, sometimes maybe by our spirit. But they're influenced by our beliefs, and we don't necessarily have conscious control of our thoughts either. Well, part of the goal of learning how to manifest consciously is to take control over both your beliefs and your thoughts and start channeling them into productive ways to create the reality you want to experience. Next down is our feelings. And emotions are not often addressed when it comes to law of attraction, but they are a huge component. It's not just about positive thinking, it's about positive feeling. I like to say you get more of whatever you focus on. And your foci are your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions. I do teach a course called Emotional Mastery, so that's another component of conscious manifestation, is really taking charge over your entire being, not just the thoughts you're having, not just your beliefs, but your emotional state as well. Lastly are words and actions. Words are very helpful, and again, as a trained neurolinguistic programmer, I have learned how valuable words can be, both in discovering those other parts of you, because we often speak unconsciously what we believe or think to be true. They're also helpful in channeling our foci. So, for example, a lot of people, it's kind of endemic in our culture, a lot of people say constantly what they don't want. I don't want to be sick, I don't want to be late, I don't want my boss to fire me, or I don't want my lover to leave me, or if you start paying attention out in the world and to what yourself is saying, you're going to hear a lot of don'ts. So one of the practices that I recommend right out the gate for everybody is to start paying attention to your language and eliminate the word not and all of its contractions. So don't, can't, won't, shouldn't, wouldn't, doesn't, isn't, you name it. Get rid of that word. And also the words but and try. It's very interesting when you have to start formulating your thoughts and you're paying attention and to what comes out of your mouth, and you have to rephrase things. Instead of saying, I don't want to be late, what do you want? I want to be on time. Instead of saying, I don't want to get sick, what do you want? I am always healthy. We'll talk about settings and stuff like that too, but that's part of the process, is stating and speaking only in the positive. It's very, very helpful, huge. That one piece transformed my life, or really got it, focused in the right direction. And it's the easiest tool to use because obviously I can't peer into your subconscious and see what your beliefs and your thoughts and your feelings are. I have to use your words to help diagnose those. So I'm very skilled at that, and it's one of the things I excel at. I'm also an author. And I'll let you know a little secret. I don't know if you guys are familiar with referential systems, but it's basically the way that our brains process information. So some people are very visual. In other words, when they're thinking to themselves, they think in images. Some people are very auditory. When they're thinking to themselves, they're thinking in sound, dialogue, or maybe just remembering sounds or whatever. Some people are kinesthetic, which means when they're thinking to themselves, they're thinking with their feelings. They're feeling about things more than they're processing it with the other senses. It's very interesting stuff. Anyway, I am actually auditory digital, which means I think mainly in words. When I'm thinking alone to myself, I am imagining dialogues or conversations or just words, just literally thinking out sentences and paragraphs of what my thoughts are. Part of what helps me be a good author, I'm sure. But figuring out what your referential system is can also be very helpful. Okay, so the group formula, basically, after this introduction, I'm going to invite you all to get naked. And what I'll then do is go around the group just real briefly and ask you each what you want to work on. I have a notepad, so I kind of make notes as we go. Then I divide up the time evenly among all participants, and I use a timer so it's fair for everyone. And when it's go time, you go. It's up to each individual whether you want to just receive input from me or if you're open to receiving it from the group, other members of the group. And we just go to work on whatever you want to work on. All topics, any and all topics. I have helped people with businesses, projects, relationships, relationship skills, dating, even finding partners, time management, a lot of organizational stuff, self-management, emotional mastery, you name it, and we can talk about it. Any and all topics, any and all. And I get a lot of people asking me, is it okay to discuss sex? Yes, that is part of the human condition. My goal is to help you all more fully live a life that you love. Or get to a life that you love if you're not already there. And really live out your dreams, whatever they may be. And everybody's different. We all have different dreams and goals and ambitions. So my goal and ambition is simply to help you achieve yours, whatever it may be.